Hello and welcome. You're watching Arirang News, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kwon Jang-ho and thank you for joining us. President Moon Jae-in is in Russia. It's the first state visit by a South Korean president in 19 years, and he was also given the honor of speaking at the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament. That was the first time ever for a South Korean president. The timing of this visit comes as the international community is still digesting the North Korea-U.S. summit that took place in Singapore last week. And despite Russia's role in affairs on the Korean peninsula being somewhat reduced in recent years, President Moon was keen to renew ties. As he said, Moscow still remains a key player in the region's security and economic future. We'll discuss the implications of Moon's visit with an expert a bit later. But first, let's catch up with the latest headlines by heading over to our news centre where Devin Whiting is waiting for us. Devin?
Hi, Jang-ho. Yeah, President Moon spoke Thursday evening at the Duma and will be sitting down with President Putin today in the afternoon, Moscow time, which will be a little after 7 p.m. here in Korea. As you said, it'll be the first time in 19 years that a South Korean leader has met with a Russian leader at the Kremlin. According to the Blue House, the summit will likely focus on strengthening the two leaders' friendship and trust, and thereby expanding their countries' practical cooperation. It'll also be an opportunity to reinforce their bilateral communication on strategic matters and their collaboration in the process of building peace on the peninsula. A joint press conference will take place afterwards, which will be followed by a state dinner in honor of President Moon's visit. Before the summit, the president will attend a South Korea-Russia business forum where he'll encourage business leaders from both countries to do more together. Meanwhile, delegations from the respective Red Cross organizations of the two Koreas are meeting once again today. Top of the agenda is arranging reunions of separated families, but other humanitarian issues could be discussed as well. Let's connect to our Unification Ministry correspondent, Oh Jung-hee, who's following developments from Seoul's Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Jung-hee, so it's been hours since the talks began. How are things going?
Good afternoon, Devin. The two Koreas started their Red Cross talks at 10 a.m. sharp at North Korea's Mount Kumgang. And by 1 in the afternoon, they were done with a general meeting as well as a separate round of talks, a separate first round of talks between the leading delegates of Seoul and Pyongyang. The two sides exchanged a draft agreement of today's talks at 1:30. They had lunch from 2 to 3 and are expected to have begun another round of talks between the leading delegates. The main talking point of the day is holding reunion of families separated by the Korean War. It's something the leaders of the two Koreas agreed to do at their summit talks in April to hold the reunions on National Liberation Day, August 15th. Seoul and Pyongyang are discussing when and how to hold the reunion event, how many participants they'd have, and whether the related facilities need to be renovated. The two sides are very eager to resolve humanitarian issues, especially easing the sorrow of families separated by the Korean War. And it seems the place where they're meeting, Mount Kumgang, where numerous family reunion events have taken place in the past, gave them an extra special feeling and a strong sense of responsibility to make sure these talks are a success. Take a look at what each delegation had to say at the opening of today's talks.
Even if today's talks are only a day long, if we approach them with sincerity, I believe we can discuss a lot of things. We should seize the vital force from Mount Kumgang and resolve the agony of the Korean people.
As for Mount Kumgang, it's a symbol of national harmony and unity. It's the only place that has provided healing for our separated people. If we aim to firmly break with our disgraceful past and develop a new mindset, I believe we can have smooth humanitarian cooperation between the North and the South.
If the reunion event does take place, it'll be the first one in 3 years since October 2015. More than 132,000 South Koreans are registered as separated from family in the north, but among them, only 56,000 are still alive, and among those, 85% are over 70 years old. Devin?
All right, Oh Jung-hee reporting from the Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Thank you. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump says North Korea has already started its full-scale denuclearization. He said Thursday that Pyongyang is following through on the declaration made at the summit last week in Singapore, pointing to the remains of American soldiers who died in the Korean War that the North has apparently handed over already. Kan Hyung-woo has more.
During a cabinet meeting on Thursday, President Trump said North Korea has already entered the process of denuclearization. specifically citing that Pyongyang is destroying its missile test sites.
They're destroying their engine site. They're blowing it up. They've already blown up one of their big test sites. In fact, it was actually 4 of their big test sites. And the big thing is it will be a total denuclearization, which is already taking place.
However, he did not clarify that these blown-up facilities include the Punggye-ri nuclear test site that North Korea already destroyed back in May. Having said the remains of 200 fallen U.S. soldiers had been sent back from North Korea the day before, Trump made it clear the process is ongoing.
That they've already sent back or in the process of sending back the remains of our great heroes who died in North Korea during the war. And that's already in the process of coming back.
He added that the relationship with North Korea is quote-unquote very good and that he and Kim Jong-un are going to create a brighter future for North Korea. According to State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert on Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet with North Korean officials at the earliest date possible to implement the outcomes of North Korea-U.S. summit. But she said there were no meetings or travel plans to be announced at the current time. 간영우, Arirang News.
So if things go well today at the Red Cross talks, separated families from the two Koreas will be given a chance to see each other on August 15th, as agreed back in April in the Panmunjom Declaration. Our Kim Mo-gyun tells us a bit about some of those past reunions.
The history of separated families on the Korean peninsula stretches back to the Korean War in the 1950s. Millions of people were separated from their loved ones, with many not even having a chance to say a proper goodbye. But with the efforts of the Red Cross from both sides, the first historic reunion was realized in 1985 when Seoul and Pyongyang held performances on the sidelines of the 40th Independence Day celebration, allowing some 30 citizens from each country to meet their war-torn families. And 15 years later, in 2000, state-run reunion events and exchanges between families officially kicked off after the two Koreas agreed to cooperate on humanitarian issues at the June 15 Inter-Korean Summit. The first historic reunion was held on August 15 that year and was followed by another 19 face-to-face reunion events over the next 15 years, allowing nearly 20,000 members of some 4,100 families to see each other again. Aside from face-to-face meetings, other types of exchanges such as 7 video reunions and 600 letter exchanges have also been made. However, since 2015, such reunion activities have stalled, and South Korea has been calling for an urgent revival of the reunion events since last year, as there may not be much time left for some of these families. As of the end of May, almost 57% of the estimated 130,000 family members on the waiting list for reunions have died, with more than 85% of the remaining survivors aged above 70 years old. The North, meanwhile, had been demanding the repatriation of 12 female North Koreans who worked at a restaurant in China and came to the South in 2016 as a condition for the resumption of the event. But with the thawing of relations between the two sides lately, and with President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreeing on the Panmunjom Declaration, there are high expectations that the family reunions will resume this year. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines at this hour.
President Moon addressed the Russian parliament on Thursday, the first for a South Korean president. In his speech, he said cooperation with Russia is the key for peace on the Korean peninsula, as well as future economic opportunities in the Eurasian region. Our Blue House correspondent Hwang Wo-jun brings us this report.
When it comes to establishing peace and seeking mutual prosperity, South Korean President Moon Jae-in stressed how imperative Russia's role is in the region.
나는 한국과 러시아의 협력이 한반도 평화와 동북아 번영의 주춧돌이라고 생각하며 그동안 진심으로 노력해 왔습니다.
President Moon said the bilateral relationship between Seoul and Moscow is the key to open the gates of Eurasia, which the South Korean leader called a land of great opportunity.
유라시아가 가진 무궁무진한 가능성을 우리의 우정으로 활짝 열 수 있다고 믿습니다.
The comments were made as President Moon made history, delivering a speech at the State Duma, the lower house of Russia's Federal Assembly, on Thursday, becoming the first South Korean president ever to do so. During the speech, President Moon noted his Russian counterpart's vision of an era of peace and co-prosperity among Eurasian nations, or the, quote, New East policy, is in sync with his own, quote, New Northern policy, the Moon administration's key diplomatic policy to expand South Korea's diplomatic and economic horizons with its Eurasian neighbors. According to President Moon, such efforts would see the two countries developing new growth engines, while Seoul keeps its promise to develop Russia's Far East. President Moon said the Korean people's desire for peace and prosperity is not limited to the Korean peninsula, but involves all of Northeast Asia. And with that, President Moon introduced his vision for a trilateral partnership between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Moscow.
한반도의 평화 체제가 구축되면 남북 경제 협력이 본격화될 것이며 러시아와의 삼각 협력으로 확대될 것입니다.
President Moon identified railroads, natural gas, and electricity networks as the most promising sectors for cooperation among the three countries. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now, joining us in the studio to discuss President Moon's visit to Russia, we have Professor Shin Sang-yup from Kyung University. Professor Shin, thank you for coming in today.
Pleased to be here today.
This is President Moon's first trip abroad since the U.S. and North Korea summit last week. And there's some significance in the timing of that, I feel, especially as Russia is a key regional player. What do you make of Moon's visit to Russia?
Well, he is right now paying his official visit to Russia, state visits. Last bit was made about 19 years ago, so it's quite meaningful. And this is the first summit diplomacy after the summit meeting between U.S. President Trump and then North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Well, I think the reason why he went to Russia, I think it can be summarized two things. The first one is he wanted to get the Russia's support towards the denuclearization of North Korea. And then by doing so, he wanted to settle down the peace, not only on the Korean peninsula, but also in the region. A second one, and I think this is more important. If South Korea and North Korea could settle down the peace on the Korean peninsula, maybe the economic cooperation with Russia seems to be more important than it is. Owing to the close relations with Russia, the North Korea could achieve the economic development. It was not enough, but they could achieve some economic development over the last years. But for the future economic development of North Korea, the cooperation with Russia seems to be very important. But not only the relations between cooperation with Russia, but also the economic relations, cooperation with South Korea, so-called the economic cooperation among three countries, such as Korea, North Korea, and Russia, seems to be very important for the economic future in all three countries. Let me give you some figure. For example, if they established the gas pipeline on North Korea, trespassing the North Korea, connecting South Korea to the Eurasian countries, also trespassing Russia. Maybe Korea, it is estimated that South Korea could get about $4 million economic benefits every year, and North Korea could get the $1 million economic benefits every year. So this is just one example, but by having the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, they could have economic prosperity not only in these three countries, but also in the region.
Sure, and these are some of the things that President Moon covered in his address to the State Duma, the Russian lower house. He's the first South Korean president to ever have done that as well. He went over various topics, as you said, the economic cooperation, to the history of the two countries as well. What in the speech stood out for you?
Well, as I already explained, they discuss about economic cooperation, and then Mr. President emphasized the importance of denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. It can be the stepping stone for the future economic cooperation among three countries. And if I add one thing more, President Moon Jae-in emphasized the cooperation between two countries in the IT industrial sector, which South Korea has competitiveness, and then the basic science knowledges which Russia has. If they combine very successfully, efficiently between the IT knowledges which South Korea has and then basic economic knowledges which Russia has, there must be very productive outcomes. And then Mr. President emphasized this one, and this can be one of the area where two countries could cooperate each other, and then this can be a good example of successful economic cooperation between two countries. And of course, on the top of this one, they emphasized how to cooperate, achieve the economic cooperation, particularly in the railroad. They discuss about how they cooperate on linking two Koreas with Russia by railroad, and they also discuss about economic cooperation on the strengthening the partnership and on the cooperation building the gas and electricity infrastructure.
You talked a little bit about the economic benefits, and earlier you talked about the economic benefits with North Korea as well.
Right.
Geographically, North Korea is in the middle of Russia and South Korea. But you talked about the benefits, but what are the obstacles of getting there?
Well, I think at the moment we cannot say that there are, no obstacles. But I want to rather use the preconditions for economic cooperation. What is it? That is the denuclearization of the North Korea. And that can be a first step for the future economic cooperation. Let me give a more detailed explanation. Right now, because of the North Korea, the economic cooperation between South Korea and China has been detouring the North Korea, right? But if we can solve the North Korean nuclear issues, then we don't have to detour the North Korea. That means let them invite to our economic cooperation. There must be some synergy effects in the economic cooperation between Korea and China, even with the participation of the North Korea. And then, as I already explained very briefly, Russia seems to be a very important player in achieving the economic cooperation in the region, right? Russia has abundant, energy resources, and they have a very vast land. So, for example, by building the railroad transpassing Russian continent, connecting South Korea to Europe, definitely there must be some huge economic benefits. For example, saving the transportation costs, and then and also they could be use abundant natural resources which Russia has. It could be definitely huge economic benefits for not only for Korea, North Korea, and Russia, and then by promoting the economic cooperation in these three countries, it can indirectly or directly promote the regional economies and then global economies. So it will be very important.
Both Russia and Seoul are talking about this opportunity if they work together to work with North Korea as well. The huge economic benefits that it could have for everyone involved.
Right.
But isn't it slightly jumping the gun at the moment? Because, as you said, despite North Korea and US having friendly relations now and inter-Korean relations being good, it can always go back. It's still not resolved. Why would South Korea and Russia already, at this point, be wanting to pursue this kind of venture?
Because, still, we just started the talks for the complete and irreversible and then verifiable so-called denuclearization of North Korea. And still we have to wait the follow-up measures of North Korean government. Without any progress, in an effort to achieve the denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, more specifically speaking, denuclearization of North Korea, all those discussions cannot be realized. So, to make the persuade North Korea to implement what they agreed at the series of summit talks with the South Korean president and then USA president, we should make every effort. This can be those kind of efforts. Let them do what they promised. I think that can be the first step for the future economic and political cooperation between the USA and Russia and the North Korea and South Korea. So, I mean, of course, China. So, I mean, we could understand those kind of things in this context.
President Moon, when he's expected to talk with President Putin today, and they're expected to try and garner Putin's support in helping the process of denuclearization of North Korea.
Right.
But actually, what influence does Russia have right now over North Korea, and how can they help or hinder even?
Well, still the Russian role is not very clear. I mean, but we know that. It sounds quite contradictory, but the contribution of Russia seems to be very important in an effort to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea. So we should wait and see, I mean, what kind of the role the Russian could play. Depending on the situation we will face, the role of the Russian government could be more concrete. And but at the time, I mean, as we discussed before, if they could have the economic cooperation with the USA and with South Korea particularly, they could, I mean, North Korea, and then they could get the huge economic benefits. I mean, as I already emphasized, that to do that, the denuclearization of North Korea seems to be the first step. So the Russia, I mean, they have enough motivation, reasons to persuade North Korea. Of course, there must be some political reasons, you know. If the North Korean nuclear crisis cannot be, I mean, solved, there must be continuous challenges to the security to all countries in the region, including Russia. It is not good for the Russia itself. So, I mean, I think that the Russia has, I mean, political and economic reasons why they have to have the, I mean, play some role in solving the North Korean nuclear crisis.
Kim Jong-un has now met President Moon, President Trump, and President Xi Jinping as well.
Right.
Now, the obvious leader next is Vladimir Putin. There is talk of that happening soon in the next few months or so. Do you think they will meet? And
I think so.
What will they talk about?
I think so. I mean, definitely Russia is one of the major players in the region. So it is also the fact that Russia was a little bit away from the negotiation to solve the denuclearization of North Korea. But certainly, what is certain is that they will not remain as outsider in the whole process to solve the North Korean nuclear issues. So, I mean, they will be invited, and they want to also participate in the negotiation. Definitely, so as long as we cannot prevent Russia from involving in this issue, then we have to welcome them, and then we have to also persuade them to be a real contributor to solve the North Korean denuclearization process. So in this context, I think if the Putin meet the Mr. President, I mean the Trump, definitely they will discuss about how to solve the North Korean nuclear crisis, and at the same time they want to persuade how to persuade the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un not to change his stance about this issue.
So you just mentioned there Trump and Putin. It's understood that Trump and Putin are working towards some sort of summit, possibly in July. And before that, the US National Security Advisor John Bolton is on his way to Moscow later this month. Amid all the things that are happening between US and Russia right now, North Korea, you would say, is still a key issue between the US and Russia?
Right. I think so. You know, as I already emphasized 2 times, the Russia's, the North Korea should achieve the, should take the follow-up actions, measures to achieve the complete denuclearization in North Korea. Without it, we cannot make even one step further. Economic cooperation, no. Without the denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, it cannot make it. And then, so definitely, what we do at the moment is that persuade Kim Jong-un and persuade, empathize what kind of the economic benefits he could get from the denuclearization. So to make a long story short, definitely every country, I mean, involving country, seems to make every effort to persuade North Korea not to change their stance about the North Korean denuclearization issue.
Yes, I guess everyone has something to gain from it. That's all we have time for today, I'm afraid. But thank you for coming in as usual, and it's always great to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Now that concludes our show for today, but I'll be back next week with more insights and analysis of the week's top stories with our experts. Hope you can join then, and in the meantime, hope you have a great weekend as well. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.